Hey everybody, I'm Jason Treuting. I am your fearless host of So Percussion's Brooklyn Bound podcast. This has been so fun. Thank you, Vic. We're getting ready for a show, a bigger Brooklyn Bound show. It's at Roulette on February 5th. It's going to be a marathon of a lot of amazing percussion stuff, and very psyched to have Brooklyn Bound podcast alum Victor Caccese, old hat down here, and newbie Andy. I'm so excited. Andy Akiho is here joining us. Everybody put your hands together.
That's awesome.
We're really pumped. Victor is gonna be playing some of your music on this show, and I'm psyched to talk about it. But my first question, I usually zoom out pretty far. I'm sure folks can, well, Victor, we'll get to you too, though. Folks can go to another podcast and learn about you. Andy, you are now a composer, a performer. You do all kinds of amazing things. When did you make your way into music? What was the little Andy? You know, is this like 2 months old? You came out of the womb doing crazy stuff, or when did you discover your path into music making?
I think I was around 8. My sister got me into drum set, playing rock drums and trying to be like my sister. She was 10 years older. She basically raised me. So she got me playing drums early on.
Amazing. And because she was a drummer too?
Yeah, she was a drummer. She's getting back into it too. She just got a new drum set again.
Amazing.
So, really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a similar but different story. I think maybe I was 10. I found a drum set, started to tinker around. But we're not the same age. So what was your garage band vibe, or what music were you playing when you got on the drum set?
Metallica and Justice for All, some Guns N' Roses, Appetite.
Okay. Maybe we are the same age.
Hip hop. Yeah, I'm about to be 43 next week.
Right. We pretty much are 44. I got one.
Okay.
Absolutely.
There you go.
That was similar stuff, and that's cool. I feel like even Josh, and so he'll talk about Metallica, but he talks about the Black Album. I mean, that's fine, whatever. But it feels like and Justice for All is different.
Yeah, and Master Puppets and and the earlier ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so 8-year-old drum set, sister's drum set. Where were you, and what was the trajectory from there to? You went to college for music, I think, right? So what was your trajectory there? I was
in Columbia, South Carolina. Doing drum set, and in middle school, learning the snare drum, and then high school doing drumline. I used to do a lot of drum corps, and then I went to University of South Carolina for undergrad and started to try to read pitches by then.
Were you there as a drummer, as a percussionist?
Yeah, barely.
Is that Scott Herring there, or is this a different? No, this was probably
Jim Hall. Scott Herring got there right after I left. Yeah.
Cool. There's a series there called Southern Exposure that my Parker Harley, actually, I think I remember playing.
It's great.
Yeah, it's very cool. So I know a little bit about Columbia, South Carolina. Okay, so you're a drummer in South Carolina. Keep us going.
Oh, and in undergrad, I got into all the ensembles, like really was into them. Like West African drumming, I did a lot of that. That was my biggest thing. And steel pan, doing the steel drums in school with the university band. Got into jazz a lot there, was doing the orchestral thing with the South Carolina Philharmonic, and everything from like Brazilian batucada, concert band, all that stuff. And then after undergrad, I went to Trinidad a couple of times. That's where I met Josh.
Yeah, you
was down there. That was 2002. Yeah, we lived in the same house. So and I just got really into steel pans. Then moved to New York. Was trying to be a bebop jazz panist, and then and then started arranging for the steel bands in Brooklyn, out in Crown Heights, and then went back to school way later. I was about 28 or so. Went to Manhattan School for contemporary percussion.
Right. There's that program there that's just for that.
Right? Yeah.
CP or whatever, the contemporary percussion program. Yeah.
Yeah, contemporary performance. So it was a lot of different instruments, but we were the first class to go there.
Oh, cool. No way.
And then and then started composing for all my friends there. That's what really got me into composing for other instruments, not just the steel pen, you know.
So who was there? I bet we know some of those folks. Who?
Oh, that's like Vicky Chow, Load Bang Ensemble, Mivos Quartet. That's almost everybody. And then, you know, like Megan Schubert, Amelia Lucas. There was a lot of great players that I was inspired by, because I didn't know any classical musicians for about 8 years when I lived in New York. And it was nice to get in that scene and just be thrown right into it. And right before that, I was a sushi chef for a year or two, and would play jazz at my dad's restaurant. That was down in DC. And then,
what haven't you done, Andy?
Yeah, I want to hear more about that though. That feels fun to talk about. Oh my God. Let me back up. I have one, Victor. I'm not ignoring you.
No, it's all good. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. But so when I'm just learning, Andy, so I went down to Trinidad for the first time right before the pandemic. It was like actually the second to last thing we did. And
it's amazing.
I don't know much about I'm trying to learn more on the kit. You know, that feels like my way in, but I played some lead pan, played with the band down there. It was cool.
Oh, cool.
Met some of the folks, Ken Williams, you know, probably Mark and Odie. That was who so the Brooklyn pan scene, like what was that hang? I know some band, there's like Chasm is a band in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I was arranging with Freddie Harris III. We were doing Sesame Flyer Steel Orchestra. They were down on Church Avenue back then. Their headquarters is still down there, but the band, the pan yard used to be right there on Church also.
Yeah. And
then I used to play with Pantonics in Brooklyn before I arranged, and that was Clyde Bradley at the time. But in Trinidad, I played with Ray Holman with Starlift, and then Bootsy Sharp with Phase 2. And what's crazy is Kendall we were standing right next to each other almost every night at Phase 2 in 2003.
Wow.
And then I didn't see him for like 6 or 7 years later in New York, and we'd both been studying with Julia Wolf.
Wow.
And this classical contemporary scene. But it's just, what are the odds? I mean, what are the chances? Like, you know, he was a teenager back then. When, I think I was around 23. We were playing with Phase 2. It's crazy.
You know, that name is just like, I mean, people talk about him as the arranger. I mean, just hot, like one of the guys. Like he's like,
he's legit.
That's Phase 2. Yeah, I saw that band when we were down there, of course. And Josh, you guys were playing in that band together.
We were in the same house, and I was playing with a band right down the street, Starlift, that year. Then the next year, I went and played with Phase 2.
Oh, cool. How
so,
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Do you know, the interview I did before this one, Quint Rose. I don't know if you know Quint.
I know him really well. Yeah. And then
playing on the show.
Yeah, he played in the band that we arranged for Sesame Flyers, and he was like one of the hot shot, amazing pan players. And I knew him from Trinidad too, because we did the solo competition down there in 2002. So that's where I met those guys like Leon Foster Thomas, Freddie Harris III, Quint Rose. We were all kind of like,
that's very cool,
duking it out for like the solo thing. Yeah,
I love it. I'm just learning. I'm a newbie, but like I said, I'm gonna sit back on the kit next time, learn more about.
That engine room is tight.
Yeah,
it's fun, right?
I think that's where I'm gonna head next time. The lead stuff was super fun to play, but I think Jerry Williams was playing drums in the back, and I feel like I should sit back there a little bit more and learn, learn some stuff. Play louder. I think that's the first thing I need to do is play louder. It's like, holy crap.
Gosh, I know.
It's like the orchestra is like 128 members.
Totally. Yeah. 2 drummers, huge instrument. It's like slamming.
It's fun.
Cool, man. I just wanted to pit stop along that way. Many other things to talk about. So, Victor, we've talked at least once, probably twice on a Brooklyn map. Victor obviously plays in Sandbox percussion. You all can check out the Sandbox interview and learn more about when Victor picked up sticks for the first time, what metal he was playing when
I know.
But so it's cool. So on this show, let me back up. You all just did a huge project together. It's called Pillars or Pillar Set. Is it called 7 Pillars?
7 Pillars, yeah.
I stopped myself because it's 11 tracks on the 7 Pillars.
Right.
I believe I was at the premiere of the first pillar, which was Pillar 4. So much confusion in the way I'm explaining this project. But maybe
you're right.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
Yeah, at National Sawdust. It was awesome. A night that you put together, Andy, I think with Ian and some folks.
Ian, yeah.
Yeah, that, and it was just amazing to see that piece. And then Victor, you all have been playing that by itself for a while, and kind of slaying it. And it's made its way into the repertoire, and like, you know, we'll hear it when we travel around and coach stuff. But this year, the whole mammoth, epic, huge piece, whole set of music came out. So, Victor, let me give you the mic a bit. Can you, before we get to your specific, you know, role, what you're doing in Roulette, can you talk about the big project and let us in on that?
Definitely, yeah. So you're right. Pillar 4 was kind of that premiere was at National Sawdust. I think that was that 24 like 14 or so, 14.
I think it was 2016.
Oh, 16.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though it was written in 14. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and the commissioning of that movement. I mean, I think originally it was a commission for just sort of one movement by this group of time travelers actually who premiered that piece at Sawdust, and it's my understanding that Andy had this idea for this piece being Pillar 4, but in the process of writing it, it actually like had all. He realized that there were all these other compositional ideas that he wanted to create a much longer piece, kind of an evening length piece. I think, Andy, you had a lot of the kind of framework actually kind of in your head. I mean, obviously, like the little details, the notes themselves were not like fully figured out, but you had a lot of the sort of structure already in your mind back in 2000. I guess when you wrote it, actually, maybe in 2014, but definitely in 2016 when Pillar 4 premiered. And then after that piece got premiered, Sandbox, I think we were all friends at that point with Andy already. We were kind of getting to know him a little bit more closely, but it was around that time when we sort of really committed. Sandbox as a quartet really committed to kind of taking on this larger piece that Andy had in mind, something that was larger than just Pillar 4. I think at that time he told us like Pillar 4 is actually like the middle movement. It's going to be a palindrome, so like on either side there'll be sort of like reflective material. And that was really exciting for us, and exciting for us to hear him talk about how this piece was actually as big and massive as Pillar 4 felt. Actually, this full piece was going to be even more sort of massive than that, you know, and like drawing from a lot of the musical ideas that were in Pillar 4. So we took that project on, I guess, pretty seriously. We talked with Andy about that, I think probably in 2016 or so. And since 2016 to basically now, we've been doing all the things that are required to bring a new piece to life, which, Jason, obviously you know what all those things are, you know, like even just like workshopping the music with the composer, funding the piece, finding a world premiere, finding the time and space to actually get to work on the music with the composer. And that's something that we've been doing since that time. And it's been a long journey, and there's been like a lot of different people have come together to kind of help make it possible. But we're super excited to now have the album be out in the world. Actually, the album came out a little bit before the premiere, and that's kind of a reason for, or the pandemic is a big reason for that. I think we had the world premiere set at the Mandavi Center. It was supposed to be in March of 2020, March or April of 2020, yeah. April of 2020. And then that was like, that was right at that time when, you know, everything just kind of just ended. And that concert, of course, was canceled. But then we kind of committed ourselves for the next year to sort of say, like, okay, instead of just waiting for the next world premiere opportunity, why don't we like shift focus and like kind of quarantine ourselves and record the piece? Because really, actually, we only really need ourselves to record the piece. So we decided to kind of switch the order of the way things are usually done, I guess, like in the contemporary classical musical world, which is premiere the piece and then record it. I guess we kind of did it in the opposite this way. So we recorded the piece, released the album months even before we gave the actual world premiere, which happened this past December, actually. So it's all out there in the world right now, and it's been a long journey. We're super psyched to have it out there, though.
It's awesome. I mean, I haven't experienced it live yet. I've obviously experienced it. I've listened to it. It's epic. And amazing. And I think, and it's awesome actually to see. I do a little bit of teaching. Me and Eric teach up at the Bard Studio, and I mean, Andy, you'll be so, I mean, it's just like wildfire. It's like, have you heard? Have you heard? You know, it's like that feeling, you know, which is amazing. And I have to say, you know, So's first commissioning experience was with David Lang. And it was this similar vibe of like, hey, can you write this? And then it was like, yeah. And like, you know, 3 minute was a 35-minute piece, you know. And it seems like maybe this is 20 years later, so it's twice as big. I don't know, it's 7 minutes, it's big. Yeah, it's big. So, and I'm very intrigued by the structure of it. And so it's the 7 pillars are the quartets, but then there's a solo for each member of Sandbox, right? Or for each, you know, person in the group. And I'll say, I mean, like, you know, knowing your music over the years, and like, I mean, I can remember all these amazing moments coaching this music and hearing these pieces. Like, you have a vocabulary, you have a sound world that feels like you have a stamp. You know, there's that I've learned. I think Pillar 4 is a lot of that, but also the pieces you wrote for marimba and string quartet, or you know, many. It's okay. Oh, no problem. I'm gonna be doing I'm gonna be moving in a moment. Let me ask a question and I'll let you answer it while I move, Andy. So what is, I mean, how do you think about that? Do you think about this piece in terms of like, you have a stamp on a sound world that you developed into 7 pillars?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've learned a lot by writing 7 pillars too. And you know, hanging out with Sandbox and being inspired and just feeling the vibes, you know, on a subconscious level too. Like it let me do whatever I wanted or felt. And I don't get those opportunities much. And then also having the time for it to develop and just grow organically, you know, the vocabulary, but also just musically. I mean, yeah, the form is pretty tight, but there's just a lot of human emotion throughout the whole process.
Did the palindrome idea, does Pillar 4 still feel like the middle of a kind of mirrored form?
Yeah, that was the idea from like actually since 2013, that the whole palindrome, and that's why it was called Pillar 4 even back then, even before the music was written. When I started coming up with the vocabulary for Pillar 4, I was like, man, this is enough vocabulary that I wanted to implement the entire piece back then. So it was a dream, but I was like, man, it might be 20 or 30 years before I get an opportunity to write these other things. Sandbox made it happen much sooner, you know, but I never thought that, you know, that could be a possibility to have a piece that long or something, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought it might be something like write a movement every couple of years or something for different commissions, and it would all puzzle together in this thing, but they went ahead and just did all the other 10 movements.
I know them pretty well. It feels like that tracks. That feels like a Sandbox kind of vibe.
Yeah,
definitely. It's good.
Yeah.
So one more question for you, Andy, before we get back to Victor. So where did the solos come from? Where did this? So there was the palindromic kind of idea. Pillar 4 is the center. You got 3 and 5, 2 and 6, 1 and 7.
Exactly.
So then, I mean, and with these solos, like Victor's playing a solo that feels like it's in the world of Pillar 4. To me, there's the pipes and the you know drum, but like, you know, that rhythmic vibe. But then there's like some really beautiful, spacious, like marimba material, vibraphone material. How did these solos come into focus?
Well, just logistically, when they come in, that's the first time that instrument is completely introduced. Victor's is sort of an exception, but actually we came to realize that that's the first time it's all his instruments are played, even though it's the second to last movement of the entire work. But when the vibraphone comes in, which happens second of the 11, then vibraphone's used for the rest of the pillars.
Oh, cool.
And then when Spiel comes in with the Glockenspiel before Pillar 4, it's just craziness. Introducing the Glockenspiel, and then it becomes the backbone of Pillar 4, even though it's chill in Pillar 4. Like he said almost everything he could say with the solo. And then after Pillar 4, we're introducing the low end. So there's a lot of high end on the first half of the piece, drums and just high, you know, metal melodic. And then we introduce marimba or aria with Ian right after Pillar 4, and then we got the low end to work with 5, 6, and 7.
Cool.
So it just kind of builds on that, you know.
And when's Victor's solo? So
his is movement 10, basically,
Yeah,
like
nice.
right before pillar 7. And
Cool.
you know, and outside of just the form, just the feeling, the organic feeling of developing a show, I felt like these are what was needed. I wanted to start strong with all percussion, no melodic material, you know, very battery. And then and then it's the ballad, basically. You know, like I'm picturing the old school rock albums too,
Yeah,
you
totally.
know, and building that timeline, but also like a rock show or just an entertaining show, how to build that energy, you know. And then so Victor's like the wild Neil Peart drum solo or something, you know, kind of like, and you know, everybody, it's got a kind of little bit of everything. You know, Ian shows that more lyrical side in his solo, and bringing in the low end, us being able to really embrace the room and the warmth of the lower octave, you know, that we had for the marimba. Those kind of things, you know,
Yeah, I
just kind
love
of
it.
make
That's
it
pretty
organic.
awesome. Totally. No, I love it. I love that. And so this show, it's a percussion marathon kind of show, so we can't do all 70 minutes of it. So we chose one slice. And actually, I mean, one thing that was interesting about it, there's going to be a bit of more dance on the show. That on this show, me and Beth we've been working with a choreographer, Susan Marshall. We're doing a little bit of dance, and it crossed my mind like, oh, it'd be really cool to bring some other movement onto the show. So one thing that you all did as you put together this album is that you made videos of each movement too, with pretty awesome array of directors. And then in this movement, in your solo specifically, I know not just the solo, but in this solo, it's like some serious choreographers, some serious dancers. So very pumped, Victor, you're going to be playing, which it's kind of a dance in and of itself, like what you're doing. But then one of these dancers is going to join you as well. So can you lead us a bit to what this Brooklyn Bound show is going to be like, this roulette show?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so the dancer that is joining is Banks Artiste. And when we were putting together the 11 videos, we wanted to mix in some other kinds of art to kind of go along with the music. So there's dance in a few of the other movements as well. I think that we had a sort of loose plan with like how all the different artists. I think we have like 40 plus collaborators if you think of like dancers and filmmakers and things like that. So we assembled like this group of people, and we were sort of strategically placing them in different movements, but it all kind of moved around in this really sort of actually kind of natural and organic way. And I think it was just all the kind of collaborators that we found together and feeling out like where everyone was going to be like utilized to the best of their talents. So Banks is from the crew Dream Ring, I believe, right, Andy? With Red Rock, and Reggie he's not going to be he's not actually on the concert, but his guy Banks is going to be dancing with the solo. He's one of the guys who's in the video for Cartograph. It's him, and then Reggie, and then King Havoc, and they're part of this crew that I think, Andy, you met them. I think it was back through National Sawdust. You did a thing with them at National Sawdust years ago, and we were looking at like some people to bring in to do some movement with some dancing with one of the movements. We were thinking like Pillar 3, Pillar 5, and then like we were feeling like Andy's. I mean, to be honest, the credit is to Andy and to Reggie, because the two of you, like Andy, you knew who Reggie was, and you knew what the movement looked like, and you knew what the movement felt like, and you were like, this has got to happen with Cartograph, with that solo, because it just, I think it spoke to you. You know, you felt like there would be like some kind of marriage there between those two types of art that would work well. You know, and I think
does that ring true, Andy? He's giving you credit? Does that feel right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like from the start, even when I'm writing the music, I'm picturing Reggie.
Yeah.
Moving. Like from that early, like it was that visual early on. And Pillar 3 is like, yo, we gotta bring Reggie and the crew in for these kind of movements. It felt right.
It was multiple.
Yeah, they collaborate on 3, 5, and Cartograph.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, working with them, they blew me away.
Everybody.
Hey, how's it going?
What's up, Elsie?
Victor, you maybe know Victor. I'm doing a podcast right now. What you need? Okay. Okay.
So nice to see you.
Exactly, right?
Awesome
Pandemic
cameo.
life.
I know,
Pandemic
yeah.
life right there. Elsie's a drummer too. We can talk about
Oh,
that.
killer.
Awesome.
What? We were Andy started playing drums at 8. I was 10. You were
There you
earlier. It's all good.
go.
You're good, drummer.
Yeah. Nice.
So you were from the beginning, you were picturing Reggie's kind of vocabulary.
Yeah, we did a couple of shows before, and we've been talking about working together for years and stuff. So this was the right project to do it with. Yeah.
Very, very cool.
It was
And so
a
the video you put out on this one, man, I hope I didn't rewatch this stuff before we got together, and I may be about to embarrass myself. But if I remember right, it's like this outdoor space, like kind of cool, like almost natural amphitheater. Like there's this wall that you're set up in front of, right? And there are three
yeah.
dancers in different spaces. And is Banks, who at one point you guys you have a kind of like face off in some way. I mean, it feels like very intense.
Yeah.
Reflecting the music in a really cool way, but like it's like the visual intensity was striking. Is that what? Tell me about that moment.
Yeah, so that's Banks. And that was we I think we choreographed that like the day before or something like that. I mean, the music is all I'm obviously playing the music the way that Andy wrote it. And we brought them into our studio. I think it was like a couple days before,
Couple
maybe
days.
yeah, maybe even the week before. And I just played it for them, for Reggie, for Banks, for King Havoc. And there was this moment. I mean, actually, Reggie, a lot of the choreography that happens with me and Banks, Reggie helped kind of choreograph that. And there's this moment when the music is really like, it's fast, it's shifting, like really, really quick, fast shifts. And there's this moment where it all stops, and I like hit the pipe and I grab the pipe and mute it.
I remember
And
that moment. That's a striking
yeah,
moment.
yeah, and it just felt like we took a couple times to practice it for them to like be able to count it out and like know like when the actual grab is coming. But we felt like, I think Reggie had this idea like, oh, it'd be so cool if he like grabs it with you and you guys just like stare right at each other, because the music does feel like there's this sort of musical battle that's happening between these sort of different little like musical fragments. So it felt sort of appropriate, I think, to have the dance reflect that in some way. Um, and Banks is, I mean, it's cool because the three of them, because they're from, I mean, they are from the same like dance company, I guess you can call it, but they have three very different styles, and they're able to sort of like define it, and the different styles, where they come from, the different kind of crews that they dance with, and Banks specifically, I think, fit really well for that moment. And there's another guy. We're gonna have a whole, we'll choreograph something for him to do for the whole piece. But obviously, the video features three of the dancers in three separate locations. And like King Havoc has this moment in the sort of quiet bit with the pipes, and he does this just incredible like slow motion movement that just fits really well with that music. So I think a lot of that was Reggie. He
No, oh, sorry for the Zoom awkward interruption. Zoom
no
thing.
no
I should have said that up front. But the group that they're from is called
Dream Ring.
Dream Ring. Amazing. And so for folks who haven't seen this video, which you should all go see the video, what's the like stylistically, I mean, I'm a little bit out of my element here. There's a pop and lock as part of this style? Yeah, like what style, how can you describe this world, this dance world, for folks who haven't seen the video yet?
I would say that the one of the main things that I gathered from it is, after speaking with Reggie, who is sort of their kind of like their head guy, he sort of assembled this group of people. He has this style that I think he kind of coined in a way, which is called pausing. And it's I think like the sort of big umbrella term would be like flexin. So it's like flexin dancing. But I think specifically with and that has like a specific style, but I think Reggie has kind of pioneered this thing called pausing. And there's this, if you just go Google, if you'd like YouTube Reg Rock, there's some incredible videos of him dancing, and his idea with pausing was he would take like this VHS tape, like one of the old VHS tapes from the 90s, And if you pause it, if you remember, you'd pause it, it would like cut between two frames, and there would be like
Oh,
this
cool.
sort of flickering. And I think I remember him saying like when I was younger, I would pause that and I would see that and I would be like really I would see that movement and find it really exciting, really interesting. And then he started to sort of train himself to actually get to
That like
recreate that. Yeah.
that flickering fit that like.
Yeah, yeah. And he does,
Oh,
I
that's
mean,
really
it's,
cool.
yeah, it's incredible the way he does it because when you see him do it, it really does, you have that feeling, you know. And I think a lot of other dancers, possibly, you know, Banks and Havoc, I think they've kind of adopted that and then added their own sort of styles that I think they have their own ways for defining it. But I think those are the sort of two big terms in that world, or be like flexing dancing and then pausing specifically with what Reggie's doing.
Man, amazing. Thank you,
It's
Victor.
cool. Yeah.
I learned something every conversation I have on this podcast. But I
Yeah.
just learned a lot. Well, we're very pumped that Banks is going to join. Um, yeah, the dancing me and Beth are doing is very different. But I in front of him, I wouldn't call myself a dancer. But I'm psyched to have multiple moments of movement on the show.
Totally. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
cool. Well, I mean, this project is huge, and everybody should check it out. 2 Grammy nominations. Saying. It's like it's been a big it feels like at a moment of, I mean, maybe this leads to my next question, at a moment in the pandemic of like, I mean, you know, it's hard to make work right now, you know, and this has been like a pretty big, pretty awesome project. It feels like you could imagine a world where during the pandemic something comes out and you don't hear about it or you don't have a chance, but this is I think had some wonderful space for folks to check it out, and it's really, I can see it making a big impact already, so I think it's pretty awesome. But
Thanks.
maybe that's like, you know, it's possible I've asked you this question already, Victor, in a different interview we've done, but it'd be great for both of you all to answer. Part of like when I started to do this podcast on Zoom, it was like, okay, you know, it's like March of 2020, right? Like it's just like
Right. Yeah.
this moment where everything, you know, and this moment of like, you know, for me, you know, of like, okay, I'm a musician, I'm a creative artist, I'm a performer, composer. What do I do right now? This moment doesn't make sense, you know. We need art in the world, but what, I don't know, you know, what does this make sense, you know, for me to do right now? And I started to kind of like really sit with that and rethink that, you know, and then like, I think because everything paused and the George Floyd murder moment, I mean, George Floyd was murdered and there was time when our community wasn't performing. And so it's hard for me to say in a great way, but in a way it led to conversations that were more deliberate about what our scene is and what it should be and what it could be, right? And so that led to those kind of questions over the summer. And then, you know, you have an election, you have like, there's just any number of things we can add over these last 2 years that are just like really heavy to sit with as artists, right?
Mhm.
So I imagine for you too, I imagine there's many different ways to answer the question, but just, you know, what has your process been as artists to rethink this moment? Has it changed the way you've worked at all, or have there been ways that it kind of like, you've seen things about your process that are important to keep going, you know, like what's been a reflection for you all in this epic almost 2 year
Yeah. Yeah.
chasm, you know?
It's a
um
good question. I think in a lot of ways we're sort of still reflecting a little bit on that, you know. I'll say I think specifically for this project, Seven Pillars, I mean, the pandemic and everything that happened in 2020, there was so many people were affected in such a terrible way. It's hard to try to say like we found some. I mean, I think that it had a lot of self-reflection and we found something new from
mm,
in ourselves that we want to try to like bring on into the future. You know, I think with Seven Pillars, what that would be is just time with a composer, really focused time when we actually have nothing else that we're doing, and our one sort of thing that we want to do is go out and create this or develop this music even more than we already had, or even more than if we had the time, like the normal time of playing. Like we have concerts set up, we have normal lives, we're traveling. We obviously weren't doing any of that, you know?
mm,
So I think not having to do those things, having to be sort of quarantined, having to be locked down, it gave us the time to spend I don't know about you, Andy, but I think that we've worked with a lot of composers, and we've never spent this much time, um, like one stretch of time, like focusing sort of on one piece. Just because like the nature of what we do, we work with lots of people and we do lots of different things that we're excited about, but there's just not enough time in the day to like go to Avalok Farm for a month and like work on this one piece.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I think the thing that we have learned through the whole process is that's actually something that we want to try to do more of in the future with other composers. Because I think our goal has always been like go through the process, get the music, like churn it out, like get as much music out as possible because that's on mission. That's what we want to do. And that's great. And I think as if you can get it out as fast as possible and as much music as possible, that's awesome. But I think that we have found that there is something with Seven Pillars that feels much more personal because of the connection that we all have now had with Andy. And that's just because of the time that we have spent
Yeah.
on the piece, the focused time that we spent on the piece. And I think that's something we want to try to incorporate into more of our collaborations with composers. So 2020 was, obviously terrible for so many reasons,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think that we found our way through it, and we found the sort of positives that we can take from it, just in our own organization.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in some of these conversations with you all in the sandbox world, and just listening to you all say, I mean, Andy, they talk about this project a lot. I mean, I know you know this, but just the going deep on something as opposed to just, I mean, you all never at sandbox, you never just go wide. I mean, you always go deep, but
Right.
going really, digging really deep, and then what do you find when you go deeper and deeper and deeper? I think that's a cool thing, just as far as relationships go. I know what you mean, Victor. I mean, I think the the pandemic has made us rethink some of those things, right? Like, what does it mean to work with somebody, and that's very cool. I'm okay with silver linings. I mean,
Yeah.
recognizing, I mean, it's also good to recognize that, I mean, how lucky we are to be able to look for silver linings, but it's cool to hear that too.
Yeah.
Andy, what's your process been? I've reflected on myself. um I mostly perform more than just compose, but I compose a lot too. I've like written nothing I've been working on a lot of my music. I'm lucky to say that. I
So
haven't written at all during the pandemic. I've like, my head has been like, I don't know. It's been strange for me to realize like, oh wow, like maybe it's because I really want to be in rooms with people, or like, you know what I mean? Like, my creative process has shifted in a certain way. What's your process been like? How, as a creator and thinking about some of these things, whether it's pandemic or whether it's, ideas of equity, or, you know,
um
yeah. What's your
yeah,
process?
there's so much. I mean, as far as like the personal journey of composing and everything, that's why I'm so fortunate for Sandbox, because we could create where we would set up a pod for a month, you know, and that kept me inspired and kept the energy and inspiration up to like keep going forward. And because a lot of that, if I were just by myself working, I'd be too depressed to do it. I think at that level, like I think I could probably get it done because I had to, because deadlines exist, but it wouldn't have been as meaningful to me. It wouldn't have been as deep, I think. Um, and it's just different for every situation. I mean, Sandbox is cool with working like that. Not everybody is. And I would love to have more of those kind of situations. That's how I've always grown up, and how I've always, starting writing so late in life too, coming like you, Jason, like we come from a heavy performance background. So we like to make music in the room with people,
Yeah.
and losing that all of a sudden. And then also the chaos with a lot of the world, and just a lot of ugly things getting out there in the world, right? And that could bring you down. And I think it was just good for us to try to put some silver lining situations while all this is going down. Like, how can we try to make our little statement help bring positivity to the world,
Mm.
and while all this is going down,
Yeah.
and I'm glad in our world that people are waking up to all these things, whether just being more aware of what's being programmed, and including people, and diversifying everything. Like, it's just I think it these past couple of years woke people up, and it's inspiring to see this, and to see a lot of different types of voices entering our world, and being super creative on a high level, but just a lot of different styles and cultures and everything, and that's been a nice thing to see come out of this, you know, and I'm hoping once we really get out of this whole pandemic thing that our scene's going to be completely different. It's going to be it's going to we needed this. I feel like it's been centuries.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like we need like
Well,
a
I think
hard
factually it has
wake
been
up.
centuries.
Right.
Factual. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. No, I like I like that, Andy, and I like looking at it from a standpoint of I mean, it's gonna be exciting to be in a scene that has so many more voices involved. There's
yeah,
nothing not exciting about it. You know, to bounce ideas and to be inspired. And the percussion scene specifically feels just that's
yeah,
so logical, and so
yeah.
weird. So weirdly how Eurocentric our scene had been. Um, yeah, it's I mean, the pandemic keeps throwing curveballs, but I'm excited to get out into the world and kind of see, yeah, you know, be a part of this conversation, you know, and get out to Portland and see you out there.
Yeah, come out,
Right.
please, man.
Yeah, no,
Portland's cool.
I think we are next year. We're gonna make it happen. We'll find a way to have some sushi, and you can lead me. Lead me. It sounds like this is the end of the conversation, but I have one more, you know, happier, not that that was unhappy, but like, you know, thinking about and maybe we can make this, I don't know if this is pillar specific, maybe this could be pillar specific. You know, and so we think so much about, you know, like concerts that happened for people before the pandemic, and those stories
Mhm.
of like, you know, oh, you remember when we played this show and this crazy thing happened, or remember when we broke this thing on stage, or remember when this, or when this awesome band, you know, we were on the same bill as this amazing band, like whatever it is, you know, like we have these like kind of like the minivan stories, you know, the tour stories.
Yeah.
You know, what's like a pre March of 2020, just really memorable show? And it could be pillar specific, but it could be, you know, um, it could be just music specific, you know, just a in the room together, sharing music, pre-March 2020 kind of tidbit.
Yeah. Doesn't necessarily need to be something I'm playing in, I suppose, right?
Well, I guess not, but you know,
Yeah.
you've played in some pretty cool things.
That's true.
Andy, anything coming to mind for you?
I mean, to tie it all in with the Sandbox crew, just like hanging in Avaloq, even before any of the music was written,
Mm.
any of the other ones, and we were just doing music videos. We were working on this Bruce Lee piece and like building sets and just working. And I think it's just more like that time of making videos and working together and just getting to know them
Mm.
is what really laid the foundation for the piece and what the life of the piece became. So those kind of moments make the process way more enjoyable, because a lot of times I get so caught up in the weeds, and then you're so focused on a deadline or the final product that you lose focus on enjoying the moments that lead up to that. And
Yeah.
just in general, these experience allowed that journey to be super enjoyable, and that's why I want to do this more. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
those are the reasons, right?
I like how much Avaloq's coming. Avaloq's a special place.
Pretty
Where's this?
beautiful.
Is it New Hampshire? Is it Massachusetts? I forget.
New Hampshire,
New
yeah,
Hampshire, yeah.
Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
that's a special place. It's very, very, very cool. All right, Victor, take us out if you could.
Yeah. No, I think I agree, and I think you know, it has been, I think one of the challenging things is just like being able to share the things that you're doing with people in a public face-to-face way. And I mean, I remember this was literally right before the pandemic started happening when we were workshopping the piece at a place called Mana Contemporary in New Jersey. And it was sort of one of our first, it was kind of right before the world premiere was supposed to be happening, and it was one of our first big workshop weeks with Michael McQuilkin, who helped us develop the live show and directed one of the videos. and we I think like we had a lot of the music written then, and we were able to play through some of it. We had staged kind of like roughly the whole piece, and we invited a bunch of people to Manic Contemporary, just sort of like in a really casual way, to come by to this big warehouse space and watch us do this sort of the kind of kernel of like what this piece was going to end up finally being. And I that was a really exciting moment, and I'm thinking back on it now, and I remember how just sharing the work that we were doing was something that was, I think that's something we can't take for granted, you know, like back then it was maybe something that was so sort of simple in everyone's mind. You can just sort of hop in and go and share, or you know, experience something that someone's sharing, or get to share something with somebody else. I think we're finding our way now how to do that in this world, and I think that's part of the reason why we're especially excited that the album is out there now, and we're able to kind of like play concerts in this in as safe a way as we can. So getting to release the album and then play the concert for this piece, it reminds me of that time like playing with at Manic Contemporary for the first time, really kind of sharing this music. So maybe something similar to how you felt at Avalok, Andy.
Yeah, that's very cool. I know you've been able to play a little bit. You've done the whole thing. I know at PASIC you made a splash with the whole thing, and I know out in Seattle you got a chance to do the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. I know there's many, many more to come. And we're excited. So this show is coming up February 5th. It's at Roulette. Those of you in New York who, you know, can make it out safely. It's a marathon. We're starting at 6. And we'll be going for three or 4 hours of percussion music. Victor, I think you're going to join us for Stay On It at the end of the night.
Yeah.
Epic percussion version of Stay On It, which should be super cool.
Yeah.
But it's also going to be streamed, you know. Andy, if you're going to be on the West Coast, you know, folks can chime in and stream, or if you can't make it out safely, you know, we can do it that way too. But it's the first kind of Brooklyn bound marathon we're putting on. We're very pumped about it. Roulette's going to be an epic space for it. So hey, thanks for making an hour to chat. This has been really cool. Andy, it's nice to catch up. We're gonna see each other on the West Coast. I'm pumped about it.
It'd be great.
Victor, I'm gonna see you February 5th.
Yeah, I'll see you really soon. Thanks for having us, Jason.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason, man. Y'all have a fun show on the 5th.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I can't wait to see it.
Stay safe, you all.
Awesome.
Right.
See you, man.
Peace.
Later.
See ya.